Howdy folks, welcome back to Boondockery. Many of you prefer a more traditional way of bushcrafting, and I've been there and done that. Went all the way back to the 18th century to do it. I had about 20 years experience in historical reenacting, primarily the 18th century. So I definitely know where you're coming from with that. Now, a lot of you are faced with the dilemma of cordage. So a lot of you resort to things like jute. Well, jute is fantastic. You can make fires with it. You can shred it up and it makes a fantastic scouring pad. There's all kinds of things that you can do with jute. But when it comes to the cordage, this is a 3-ply number 28. And this is pretty heavy duty. It's fairly strong, but it can't support my weight. I'm going to show you a way to where you can use traditional jute cordage and make it strong enough to support your weight. Jute cordage is absolutely fantastic. As a matter of fact, that's the cordage I chose to use to construct my bushcraft workstation, and it performed beautifully. When it's lashed many times around, it's very strong. However, when you're dealing with structures, that's a different critter than a lot of our bushcraft uses. Like, would you choose to use jute as a strong ridge line for a shelter? Well, there's a way that you can do it, and it's called braiding. This is a single strand of jute cordage, and this 3-ply number 28, it's pretty strong. It could probably support my weight, but I wouldn't risk my life on it. If I were to double it, well, that doubles the strength. If I were to triple it, that triples the strength. However, there's a way to where we can triple the strength and add a strength modifier in it to make it even stronger than 3 strands of jute cordage. And that is by braiding the jute cordage. Now, many of you have mastered the art of being able to take natural fibers and twist them into natural cordage. What you have done is you've taken those natural fibers, which on their own are usually fairly strong, and twisted those in a way to where that strength is maximized. And it's not just maximized like when you bundle a bunch of twigs, it makes it harder to break. It maximizes it because those twists allow the ability, when put under stress, to stretch. And that is a natural shock absorber and makes it stronger. So when you take those twisted natural fibers, increasing that strength, and you braid them together, you're drastically expanding that strength potential because you're maximizing the stretch potential at the same time. The reason that stretch is fantastic is that it doesn't put stress on individual sections of the fiber. Whereas, like you've heard the phrase, a chain is only as strong as its weakest length. The same is true for natural fibers. I've had jute that I've purchased, and very obviously there were very thin areas to where that jute was twisted. That is a weak link, and if put under stress, it's going to break there. However, if I had 2 or 3 sections of that thinner fiber, thinner cordage, combined with 2 other strands, basically that negates that weakness. Thus, you have a super strong cord that you can use for multiple purposes in bushcraft. You hear that, folks? Those are sirens. I just want to let you know that I'm filming on a Sunday, and on Sundays at the explosives manufacturer, which is about a mile in that direction, they do their test shots underground. And when they do that by state law, they have to sound a siren before and after they perform the blasts. You won't be hearing the explosions, but you will be hearing the sirens. So when you hear those, try to disregard it. That's what they are. Now I'm going to be showing you how to do braids. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the way I use any type of cordage in my bushcrafting. When I first got started, I'd always take out a big old section of 550 cord. I'd wrap it to where it wouldn't, tangle and things like that when I'm unraveling it, cutting it to precise measurements for whatever I needed it for. It took a lot of time, and no matter how hard I tried, there were always times to where it got tangled, and you had to spend the extra time to untangle it. So I got in a habit of coming out to the woods with a variety of pre-measured, pre-cut sections of cordage. I base all of those lengths on me because I don't want to take extra measuring devices and things like that, taking too much time. So I use my double arm lengths. My double arm spread from finger to finger is 64 inches. So I know that every single time that I pull this out, that's going to be 64 inches. I take 3 different pre-measured lengths out into the woods with me, and it fulfills all of my needs. I've never had a situation to where I could not use the pre-measured sections I cut to do any of the tasks that I do while I'm in the woods. There have been times where I've had to join 2 pieces of cordage because I either ran out of the longer ones or the longer ones just weren't quite long enough. So that right there is a habit I've gotten into. It works great. So when I fold them and tie them, they never get tangled. I never have to worry about, any of the issues that I used to have to worry about when I took out a 100-foot strand. So I'm going to be using that exact same measuring tool when I'm measuring out my braids. Now, when you are braiding, you will lose length in your cordage because it's going from straight to curve to lock. So you're going to be losing some length. Each amount of cordage you're using is going to be affected by its diameter and its size. This 3-ply number 28, it's a little bit on the thick side, a little bit on the heavier side. And when I measured it out and I did a braid from a single double arm span of 3 cords, I lost 3 inches per foot. So if you're wanting to measure something out to a specific length in braided form, you need to take that into consideration. Now what I would do is I would do a test section. You could actually just braid 1 foot of cordage and to see where your loss is depending on the diameter and the ply of your cordage. But mine, I measured it. Every foot that I measure out, I will be losing 3 inches for that. I'm going to go ahead and measure out 3 strands of double arm length, and then we'll get started on your instructional on how to braid. Now that I have my 3 strands measured out, the first thing I'm going to do is on one end, I'm going to line up all the ends of this cordage, and I'm going to tie a simple overhand knot very close to the end. And after that, I'm going to go to the other end, and on each end of each one of these strands, I'm going to tie another overhand knot right at the very edge, and that's going to keep it from fraying out as I make my braid. So, little overhand knots on the ends of the loose ends, and the other side, an overhand knot holding the 3 strands together. Now, if you're going to be braiding any lengths of cordage that's greater than what I did for my double arm length, you're going to want to make certain that the ground around you, to where the loose cordage is going to be laying on the ground, is free of sticks, twigs, leaves, or anything else like that, because it will get tangled up in your cordage. Best bet is actually to do this stuff at home before you go out, but if you need to do it in the field, definitely make sure you have a good clearing around the area to where you're going to be braiding, because the twigs and everything else will get caught up in there. I should be good to go with this length. Now, a braid is a repetitive process. This strand, I always start off with the right strand, is going to go over the center strand. And then that would make this the center strand, and then I would pull the left strand over what is now the center strand, and then I repeat that. Right over center, left over center, right over center, left over center. As you can see, that is a very, very loose braid. However, we don't want a very loose braid. We want a very good and tight braid. So we will do it like this. Right over center, left over center. Right over center, left over center. And as I go through each one, I'm going to be pulling the right. So we're going to have right over center, left over center, pull tight, and pull your strands all the way down to the end so they don't get tangled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I pull out the strands. So about every 6 that I go through, I'm going to be pulling these out. That way it doesn't get fully tangled at the bottom. And pull these out. And those little knots we have on the end, they really don't create an issue when we are doing our braids. And little imperfections like that, you don't need to worry about it, because the strength of the braid is going to take care of that. Now I'm going to continue braiding this out until I get a section of about 9 inches long. And that should be, long enough for me to be able to tie it around one of these sticks, a branch. If you're home, you could put it on a drawer handle, a cabinet knob, whatever, but it just is going to make it easier for this to be held while you're doing your braid. I'm going to go ahead and continue to hand braid this out to where it's 9 inches, and then I'll bring you back. I've gone ahead and hand braided this out. It's probably about between 9 and 10 inches, and you very easily can hand braid this all the way out to the end. However, I have found when you tie this section around a branch or something to support it, you're able to get a much tighter braid, and it just goes a whole lot faster. I'm going to tie it to a section on my Bushcraft workstation, and I'm going to braid it out from there. When we get to about 2 inches left on the end of the braid, we're just going to tie that into an overhand knot on the end, and we're going to worm that up to the very end of the braid. Pull it good and tight, and we're going to get and trim off those little boogers on the end, and we will have had a good usable braided jute cord that we can use for whatever we want. Now, a double arm length of cordage creates a decent usable length of cordage. It's not going to be really great for a whole lot of things, but for some things it's really good. Tying your bedroll together would be great. However, if you notice, it's not anywhere close to a double arm stretch again. And when you do longer ones, this one is a 2 double arm strand. So we got 1 true double arm strand and basically a half. And when you go completely insane and you decide that you really want a good, long, usable one, you're going to measure out 3 double arm spans 3 times. So 3 cords, double arm span 3 times. And that will give you 1, 2, and a little over a foot. So that is a good usable section. Now, as you can see, this is time consuming. And some of you are rolling your eyes just, oh God, that's stupid. Why don't you just go to the store and buy something? Well, you might feel that way. However, there could very easily be a point in time to where you're in a situation to where you need strong cordage and all you got is what you got. And if you know how to braid the cordage to make it stronger, you're going to be in a much better position. Now, there's a big kick in the survival movement. All kinds of people paying big bucks to go to survival schools and take classes and learn all this stuff. And that's great. That's great. But the thing is, every single thing we do in bushcraft is a survival skill, but it's not in a survival situation per se. But we can use survival information in bushcraft. But bushcraft is already survival information. It's much long-term than just surviving 24 hours. If you are well versed in your bushcraft skills, you can survive for weeks and months in the field and be pretty well off doing it. You're not going to be miserable surviving. So simple skills like learning how to braid cordage, that is important. If you think this is stupid to spend a tremendous amount of time braiding extremely inexpensive cordage to make it incredibly usable, I mean, by all means, I mean, that's your choice. But as far as I'm concerned, I did this many, many years ago for years, and I still have those same braided lengths of jute cordage. They have fatigued none. Through all the years of use, I used them. I used them for my bedroll. I use them to lash anything, and they're still intact. And whereas, you know, jute, cut a length of jute, I mean, you know, it goes flying away. It's biodegradable. You don't chase it down. This, once you make it, this is something you want to keep and you want to use. Jute cordage, you cut a length of that, well, if I leave it, that's okay. It's just jute. This is not just jute. This is awesomeness braided. So, anyway, this is a skill hopefully some of you might find intriguing, some of you might find enjoyable, some of you might find entertaining, but I hope a lot of you actually find the relevance and the importance of developing this particular skill in bushcraft or survival. Well, folks, hopefully I have presented a skill that you could possibly find some use for. And if you did not know how to braid yet, you now know. And those of you that did know how to braid, you found a new use for that skill. This could mean the difference in the right situation between life and death. To be able to create something that could not support your weight into something that actually could. Well, folks, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Folks, if you found today's video entertaining, educational, intriguing, what have you, please, by all means, click that like button. And if you're not already subscribed and you like content I do here on the channel, why don't you consider subscribing? And if you're subscribing, you might as well hit that notifications bell so you can keep up to date on all the videos I have coming out. Now, if you find that there's a particular video that I have produced that can provide you with information that you think is pretty important, that other people that you know might find important too, why don't you go ahead and share that video with them? And with all of my videos, please, I love to read the comments. Write whatever comment you can down. I have learned so much from the comments that it has expanded my bushcraft survival outdoor vocabulary immensely. And a lot of those skills that I have read about in the comments, I have actually been able to put to use, and they've turned out to be very helpful in the enjoyment I have with the outdoors. Folks, I really appreciate your support and all the encouragement that you give me. Thank you. Jute was a material I choose. Jute was the material however, when you want to make... Now, a long time ago, I decided that I needed to basically free this up from me trying to support it in order, and that you have found a new purpose for. Folks, if you found today's video entertaining or educational, or